This is what happened, or something like it. There was a jackal named Shandaraka, though he didn't think of himself by that name. Jackals don't think in names the way we do. He thought of himself the way we sometimes think of ourselves at 4 in the morning, as a kind of weight, a persistent fact, a hunger with edges. For weeks he had been hungry. It was the sort of hunger that becomes its own room, with its own furniture and weather. He wandered out of the dry forest at the edge of the city, drawn by the smell of cooking, rice and ghee and turmeric, and something fried that he couldn't identify. The moon was a thin commodity overhead. He should have known not to enter the town. His mother had told him, and her mother had told her, in that long line of warnings that seem to mean nothing until they mean everything. But hunger has a way of dismantling caution piece by piece, the way the ocean dismantles a sandcastle. The dogs found him almost immediately. There were 6 of them, then 8, then a number he stopped counting. They came from the alleys, with that particular ferocity dogs reserve for things that resemble them, but aren't them. Shandaraka ran. He ran past sleeping cows and stacks of firewood, past a man tuning a sitar by lamplight, who looked up briefly, then returned to his work, past a courtyard where children had left a kite on the ground like a discarded thought. He leapt over a wall. What he landed in, and this is the part that matters, was a vat of indigo dye. The dyer's workshop was empty. The vat had been left uncovered, perhaps in defiance of some local ordinance, perhaps because the dyer was a man who trusted the world more than he should have. Shandaraka sank into the blue liquid up to his shoulders. It was cold and somehow sweet-smelling, like a kind of weather. He scrambled out and lay panting in the dark. When he looked at his paws, they were the color of midnight before the stars come out. Here is something I have always wondered about. At what moment does a creature decide to become someone else? Shandaraka, lying there with his blue paws, must have understood something. The dogs had stopped barking. They had stopped, in fact, well before he reached the wall. They had seen the color and lost their language for him. He walked back through the town slowly. People drew their curtains. A woman dropped a clay pot. A baby, somewhere, began to cry in that thin and exhausted way Bobbies cry when the world becomes too much for them. By dawn, he had reached the forest. The animals were waiting in the clearing. Deer and elephants, monkeys, a leopard with one cloudy eye. Word, as it does, had traveled ahead of him. They looked at his blue fur, and they were afraid. Shandaraka, who had not eaten in a week, did the only sensible thing. "I am sent by the gods," he said. He surprised himself by how easily it came out. He had never lied before, not really. Jackals lie about small things, where the carrion is, who saw it first. But they don't lie about cosmologies. Yet here was a cosmology, fully formed, slipping out of his mouth like a fish escaping a net. The animals lowered their heads. For some time, weeks, months, in the forest, the units of time are not the units we use. Shandaraka lived as a king. The lion brought him meat. The deer brought him fruit, though he didn't eat fruit. He slept on a bed of leaves the monkeys arranged each morning with what struck him as unnecessary care. He took to sitting on a flat stone in the clearing and pronouncing on matters he didn't understand. He found, to his surprise, that he could pronounce on almost anything, and the animals would nod, and the world would continue. He had the other jackals driven out of the forest. This was the only part that troubled him late at night, when the moon was full and the air smelled of distant rain. He told himself it was necessary. They might recognize him. They might smell what he had been before. He believed this the way one believes the small lies one tells oneself in order to sleep. It went on like this for a long time. Then one evening, a perfectly ordinary evening, the sky doing its usual gradient of orange to indigo, and here he must have felt a small twinge. Seeing his own color in the sky, he heard them. The other jackals, howling somewhere beyond the ridge. It was the song he had been born into. He stood very still on his flat stone. The animals were gathered for the evening assembly. The leopard with the cloudy eye was speaking about a dispute over a watering hole. Shandaraka was supposed to listen and rule and be a god. Instead, he opened his throat and howled. I want to say that he did this because some essential part of him refused to be hidden any longer. That he chose authenticity over comfort, as we like our stories to insist. But I don't think that's what happened. I think the song was simply inside him, and when his people called, he answered, the way water answers the slope of the ground. There was no decision. There was only the howl, rising out of him before he understood what it was. The forest went quiet. The lion looked at him. The deer looked at him. The leopard, with its cloudy eye, looked at him for a long time and then began to laugh. A low, soft laugh, the kind people laugh when they have been fooled by something they should have known to question. They tore him apart in the clearing. I tell this story because someone told it to me in a roadside eatery near a town whose name I have forgotten, on a night when the rain came down so hard the road disappeared. The man who told it had a quiet voice and ate his meal without hurrying. When he was finished, he said, "The strange thing isn't that he was killed. The strange thing is that, for all those months, when he sat on the stone and pretended, he was happy. He was genuinely happy. Do you think that means anything?" I didn't answer him. The rain was loud. We sat together and listened to it for a while, paid for my tea and left.